people think, oh, stomach issues are normal, or they don't realize how good they can feel until they don't have to feel that way, especially with stomach and digestion and sleep.
Welcome to the Alive and Aligned podcast, a show dedicated to helping you live a life of truth and share your fullest gifts with the world. I'm your host, Pete Byrne, and I'm here to open your mind to new perspectives, to introduce you to some epic humans who are already out there living their deepest truth. So now just grounding in, taking a breath, letting go of anything you're still holding onto from today, and just opening up to receiving this episode now. Let's dive on in. Johanna Adriaansen is a personal development coach who specializes in working with high-performing men. She uses the modality called somatic therapy for removing blocks, identifying what's keeping somebody stuck, and ultimately facilitating embodied transformations on a conscious and subconscious level. Her lens on growth and healing is pretty similar to mine in that it recognizes that most of our surface level symptoms and issues that we face in life can be directly or indirectly caused by nervous system dysregulation. And similarly, her way of treating these symptoms also uses a bottom-up approach, understanding that the root of deep change lies in the body and in feeling and completing incomplete emotions and responses. In this powerful episode, we explore the problems that high-performing men tend to meet and how to use somatic modalities like somatic therapy or breathwork to heal the root cause of anxiety, stress, poor sleep, impaired digestion, and so on, long-term. We talk about how your overworking causes other negative habits to come up in your life, understanding the fight-flight response and how it works against you. Johanna speaks about her challenging battle with coming off prescription medication creams, how to actually change and break negative patterns in your life, and exploring your unhealed parts and welcoming the shadow. This is a super fun, powerful episode. I'm really excited for you to hear it. Let's dive on in. We have Miss Johanna Adriaansen.
Here I am.
You are here. Congratulations, you are here.
Thank you for having me.
How does it feel to be here?
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah?
Yes, I feel energized, healthy. Excited to be here.
Amazing.
Thank you.
And we were talking about breakfast before. So what did you have for breakfast today?
I also didn't have breakfast. I had a smoothie. I had a little bit of lemon water.
Okay.
There was mango in the smoothie, which I'm a big fan of right now. I'm really going through a watermelon phase, raw chopped watermelon and mango smoothies. Before I wasn't about it, but that's the current phase. What do you have?
I had a dosa.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love a savory breakfast. I really do.
Yeah. This is like a dosa is like a savory pancake with this one has like scrambled egg, mushrooms. There's some kale on the side. There's a bit of dal on top. Yeah. And chai. So feeling very full right now.
Mm-hmm. Was it from Rise?
It was from Rise.
Oh, brilliant. You got the best one.
yeah. It's a good way to start the week. We're here on Monday morning and we're excited to explore and see what comes alive. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with, tell me a bit about yourself. Like we only met officially for the first time this morning. So
yes,
we've explored a bit ourselves, but maybe you can tell the lovely people at home who you are and what you do.
Yes, I would love to. So like you mentioned, my name's Johanna, and I'm a personal development coach, and I facilitate somatic therapy with high-performing men. That is the one-sentence elevator pitch. So we'll start there.
I'm sold.
Thank you.
So who are the kind of men that generally turn up on your doorstep?
Yeah, good question. So what I see is men who have textbook success, but they don't feel successful. And so maybe they're earning an income that is quite competitive to their peers or the people they grew up around. They have a company that's flowing well. They feel good about their team or their entrepreneurship journey wherever they are, but it doesn't feel like enough. And they've already had the experience of hitting the next goal or the next level, and it still doesn't feel like enough. And what they want to feel is obviously the success that people around them are telling them that they have, and also some sort of level of peace or just like happiness really with what they've created. So that would be a flag for sure of someone who finds their way to me, and also the man who's pretty exhausted and overworked and knows he's overworked and knows that he needs to slow down. The people around him are telling him he needs to slow down, but he's actually really excited about what he has going on. So it's a bit of a battle between, there's something probably in my body as well saying I need a break.
Sure.
but I also want to have my hands in everything going on, and I'm excited about these things that I want to build, and it seems like I need to do more and I need to do more in order to keep up with his own expectations or perceived expectations. So that is a place for sure where I meet people and get to bring in a beautiful practice of nervous system regulation with the somatic therapy, which I think is something that is undervalued for sure right now. The regulation of our nervous system, which I'm sure you can speak to as well. So making it a little more than just saying go meditate, basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because if you're meditating in a dysregulated state, you're just kind of making things more uncomfortable
Sure.
or
Yeah.
highlighting the discomfort that's already there that you're probably avoiding.
Yeah, exactly. And we can highlight the discomfort. And I think it's important to feel discomfort when it exists. But if you don't know what to do with it, then it's probably just going to turn into some sort of distraction or go back to work to not feel the discomfort.
Totally. And a big thing I think is not having, so you mentioned nervous system regulation, and I think it's something that is, as you said, it's starting more and more to come to light now. I see more traction in that in people like sharing practices around, and you mentioned somatic work as well, and we'll definitely dive into that. But I feel that there hasn't been a clear connection, right, or yet on a mainstream level between people's health and well-being and nervous system regulation. For me, I feel that, there's certain things that we've adopted as, almost fact, like, intermittent fasting, that's a good thing. Meditation in general is a good thing. Getting 8 hours of sleep is also a good thing. Eating fruits and vegetables or eating whatever, different diets and stuff. There's certain diets that are university approved. It's like, that's good. Eating Big Macs every day, probably not so good.
Not approved.
Whereas the regulation of nervous system, and particularly letting go of some of these deeper somatic pieces that we can be carrying and holding, often can be the little devil under the surface that's causing a lot of these surface level issues that people are looking at and they're getting diagnosed for and taking different prescriptions for, but actually it's not the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, because it's not visible, it's a bit hard to grasp, because all these other things, you can measure sleep pretty exactly, right?
Sure.
And you can measure how healthy food makes you feel. And unless you're not going to see that your nervous system is dysregulated, you're going to feel symptoms, but we just don't have the general education or jargon even to be like, oh, I'm dysregulated right now, until you learn what it is.
Sure.
But I think what is mainstream is people talking about this being in a fight or flight response. And we really hear that, there's no saber-toothed tiger, but we're all operating like there is. So that conversation is definitely happening. But I think what's getting stuck is, how do we get out of that when our life is perpetuating that? And that's what we need to go in and really be able to practice within ourselves and reform those pathways, because our bodies have this automatic fight, flight, freeze response that's just happening. I'm not at my laptop thinking, okay, we need to fight now. It just happens, and my body gets regulated or dysregulated, and then I'm sweating or my chest is tight, and it doesn't even make sense because I'm actually calmly, completely safely sitting at my laptop at a beautiful cafe in Bali. Yeah. So the saber-toothed tiger analogy is definitely, people are hearing it, but it's the level of like, okay, what do we do about that now?
Yeah, a big part of, for me, regulation is being able to choose the appropriate response to the stimulus, to the environment. So being able to actually, like, if I'm on a beach, I don't want to be feeling like I'm running from the tiger. And if I'm running from a tiger, I don't want to be meek and just sitting there like, oh, well, I'll just relax now. You know what I mean? So it's being able to choose the correct, response to our environment, whatever that might be.
Yeah. And when that's happening, do you feel like you consciously recognize, oh, I'm feeling, maybe a sort of sensation that's a little bit inconsistent with the environment, and now I'm making a conscious choice to X, Y, or Z?
Yes, exactly. And now I'm going to choose a different pathway, because I've now become aware of what's happening in my body. And now I can decide to, okay, maybe I'm working, and maybe actually what my body needs is a break,
Right.
And actually a lot of the spillover symptoms of the dysregulation can be, maybe I feel like my body wants to rest, but there's a part of me that feels unsafe. I need to work more because I need to get money so I can be safe.
Right.
So I'm actually overriding my body's desire for rest. And what that does is it creates a split in my integrity. So I'll stop actually listening to my body. And that will result in later doing things that actually are really out of integrity, like eating a full cake or drinking 10 beers or whatever it is, because I've disconnected from my sense of truth and my sense of centeredness in myself. And the body then springs back by doing something like a coping behavior later. And then we could look and say, I've got a cake problem or a beer problem, but actually it's a sacrificing of self because we're living in these fight or flight states.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking there's so much to unpack in that one example, because that's just it. When you go out of integrity with your body, then it's way easier to drop into a distraction or a coping mechanism. And then, like you said, it seems like, oh, my problem is I can't stop eating junk food, or I binge eat or whatever. And it's like there's something underneath. There's like some level of dysregulation, unsatisfaction, and an emotion there that's driving that behavior over and over.
Yes.
But of course, we're just like looking for the dopamine and to feel better, which is again another human response. But we need to bring our conscious mind into what's actually happening. Why am I making these decisions? And it could be a tricky thing to facilitate alone. I'm not sure what your experience has been between working with practitioners and doing work alone, and how that, if it was working alone first in your own personal development and then practitioners, or vice versa. I'm curious to know.
As in like supporting myself through that.
Yeah.
So I suppose I've had a great opportunity to have a mix where I can, like being in Bali, like it's kind of like personal development mecca out here, you know what I mean? So it's like being able to have access to men's circle, which I was attending weekly for basically 2 years. Having a breathwork circle where I can show up and move somatic pieces every Wednesday for 2 years, you know, and doing the training and really a deeper embodiment in that. As well as retreats, as well as even just the standard conversations and what that brings up, and being around a group of people who are consistently tuned into that languaging, so that we can like notice triggers, let's say, and talk about them and receive information, or receive an audiobook, for instance, that shortcuts months of like writhing in the dark. I'm kind of in my hometown and no one really speaks my language, whereas here it can almost very quickly get recognized as, oh, you should try this, or you should see this guy. And then that just shortcuts the process. So that's kind of been my experience. Like when I've been tuned into that, it's been great. So I'd love to hear, like, what are some of the symptoms that you find of someone who's living perpetually in that fight or flight state, particularly with these like clients that you'd be working with?
Yeah. I think anxiety is a big one for sure. And sometimes people don't recognize what anxiety is for them. So it can just be not being able to sleep, tightness in your chest, even like stomach issues for sure. But even deeper than that, it's sometimes physical symptoms that we associate with illness, let's say like a rash or digestion issues, chronic headaches. And most people wouldn't assume to connect the dots that this issue is happening because of actually like something bigger happening in my nervous system, in my somatic body, or an emotional blockage, for example. So we can even if we look at the body as a machine and we're unable to digest food properly, we could even ask, like, what else am I holding on to? Like, why is my body holding on so tightly? So there's a lot of parallels between what's happening probably on a mental level and then what's happening in the body. And it's so interesting to explore. But yeah, that's a list between, oh, this feels like anxiety and stress and, chest tightness, but then physical symptoms are very often included as well. And people think, oh, stomach issues are normal, or they don't realize how good they can feel until they don't have to feel that way, especially with stomach and digestion and sleep.
Yes, totally. And it's almost like we want to put on a different pair of glasses to what we're used to. Like it's a different lens, because if we're looking through the lens of like, what if I don't know if anyone has, explored any basic science or, medicine, or even just basic, I suppose the lens of the Western medical system, we could look at symptoms and go on Google or WebMD and diagnose ourselves, or the doctor might even diagnose us through his lens. He will say, you're experiencing a rash, therefore take this cream or take these pills. Okay. Because through the lens that's been looked through, yes, that's correct. You know what I mean? Because that's the pair of glasses he's been trained to put on for 8 years, Whereas if we look through the lens of, oh, actually, is this because of as we could say, like an emotional thing or dysregulation created by stored emotions, then we actually see a shift, and it actually, the path back to wellness is a lot more easeful. There's a lot more hope there,
definitely.
A lot more possibility.
Yeah, and it's going to be long term. Like we can put the bandage solution on all we want, and people will and do commit to those treatments for their whole life. But if we were to just go a little bit farther and spend a little time doing deeper healing at the root cause, I think it can just be crazy powerful long term instead of just a bandage solution. And I recently had a very big experience with my skin, and I had been using steroid creams pretty sporadically for like a lot of my life for eczema. And that's not how you're supposed to use steroid creams for one. It's supposed to be kind of like heavy dose, stop.
Yeah.
But I was carrying around the tube, and anytime I'd get a couple little spots of eczema, I'd use it and whatever. And then maybe 14 or 15 months ago, I decided I need to stop using this and I need to really work on what's happening with my skin. I just assumed, I need to stop eating gluten or something. I already wasn't eating dairy. And my skin just blew up. Like I was literally covered in dry skin, scabs. I was bleeding. I was like so hot. It was like all over my neck, my arms, my legs, everything. And it was a withdrawal response from being addicted to the steroids, basically. So the steroids are like chemically altering how my body makes its own steroid-based hormones. And I had been giving it to myself topically for so long. So my body basically said, oh, I guess I don't need to do this anymore. So when I stopped, then I had a broken system for making that. And any doctor that I would see would have told me, get on some steroids ASAP, girl. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're red, you're inflamed. I could barely exist. I had to stop working. It was really quite intense, like very intense. And my whole appearance, like it was all around my eyes and like I said, my neck. And so it was such a journey of surrender, but I was very committed to not using steroids because it was just a prescription for the rest of my life and a sentence for the rest of my life at that point. So it took the full 15 months for my body to digest this and re-regulate. And I had to really, really change my diet and try different diets. And I was paleo, and then I was raw vegan, and then I was having people telling me to do the carnivore diet and all of those things. But now I feel so confident that not only will I never have eczema again, but that my liver is so cleaned up, my gut is so cleaned up because I really went in and did the work physically on my body through detoxing and fasting and all of these things. And then all of the emotional things that surfaced on the way too. So it was big, but I'm confident that, for the eczema part, it's done. It's not coming back.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
it's obviously like I know and I think most people who kind of go down the more like self-development, spiritual path can have some degree of like physical symptom that triggers that, you know what I mean? I'm sure you were already on that path to a degree anyway, but that was really kind of like, all right, we gone to -3 in the basement, let's go to -7 kind of thing,
Yes, exactly.
Let's gear it up because of course the deeper we go into the dark is the higher we can emerge on the other side to +7.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's so true. I think about it often.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned in that this is a nice segue into like what it looks like to surrender to a process like that and to what we call doing the work, the letting go of these emotional pieces that might be there.
Yeah, I love that you brought surrender back up again, because I think we can paint this picture of surrender is like a final moment where you break open or break down or whatever it is, both, and then it's just clear and easy from there. But it's choosing surrender over and over. And I was fighting that every chance that I got, like anytime I got a little bit of energy back, I was like, okay, I need to get back to work. I need to be making these things. I need to be making money. And of course, my body just didn't have the energy at all to do that. And then I would just get knocked over again, basically. But I really, I had to surrender exercise because sweating was so painful. And I'm someone who's been very consistently active for my whole life. And then I was like, well, what's going to happen to my body? And all the stories coming into my head from that. Surrendering my appearance, for sure. I looked actually crazy, like really, really unwell. And I was here for a lot of it. And the Balinese people, bless them, are so curious. And they're just like, what happened to you? And
poking you probably.
Exactly. They're like, I have a cream you can use. And I'm like, okay, you keep it. You keep that one.
I got the extra steroid cream for you.
I know, double strength. Surrendering, working, but also just, finally saying to my body, yes, I'm here and I'm listening to you. And it wasn't just about my skin. It was like the whole relationship that I had with my body and years of hating my body, really, which I think just plagues females for sure, but definitely everyone. So that was really big and really powerful. But to wrap up the surrender piece, I just want to hit on that it's like over and over that you have to keep surrendering and keep surrendering. It's not just like once and now the door's open and you're just like, oh, I get it now. Like, it's easy. Yeah. So for that, for sure. And then second part of your question.
Like what was that process? What did that look like in terms of doing the work?
Oh, yes. Right. Yeah. So doing the work. I feel like I want to give a different example that's not quite about surrender, but maybe something more specific. But when it comes to doing the work, which is something that it's kind of like a buzz phrase that we hear a lot, and I think there's some question marks around what does that even look like, and is it about having, journaling a certain amount of times or for a certain length, and
Yeah.
and what's actually happening is a level of embodiment.
Yeah.
And then I think embodiment too is another word where people are like, everyone's saying it, but what does it even mean?
Yeah.
And I think what it means is creating an actual shift deep in your subconscious, right? Because everything that we're running is so much of what we're running as far as beliefs and stories go is happening from our subconscious. So we
Yes.
need to make a shift in there. That's where the work is. That's where the embodiment is. And I've been reflecting on, well, how do we actually know when it's working? Because sometimes I've had experiences where I'm looking back at old journals and I think, shit, I feel the exact same right now. It's been a year and I haven't done enough and I'm still stuck in the same
Now
pattern.
I'm shaming myself.
Exactly. And then there's more shame and guilt, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. And then there's some other times where you look back and you're like, oh, I forgot that was even a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really nice marker for me to be like, wow, I was so stressed about that thing and it's not even in my awareness anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you know that you've actually processed it. But it does take processing. So I think it really does take becoming aware of what the issue is, getting super curious, like what's underneath, what do I need, what was I missing, what do I feel, digging. And then when you find that, allowing yourself and that part of your psyche and your body to get what it might have needed or what it does need, and then letting the integration happen. And where I know I personally get stuck, and sometimes for my clients too, we feel like we need to do more, almost like there needs to be a step by step, and then it's going to happen, and then it's going to be fixed. And usually it's like this mix of being willing to look at it, being willing to feel it, and intention, and eventually it just kind of dissolves a bit. And also bringing conscious awareness when you can to something that's undesirable, let's say that you're trying to fix, and making a different decision. Like you said, like you don't want to be on the beach and scared of a tiger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think like an interesting thing because what I'm enjoying for me, by no means would I say I'm like, the Buddha on the mountain just yet, but like I feel like I've been able to shift a lot of the core greed or like shame and guilt and a lot of these like deeper things that I would have been carrying for most of my life, just showing up, consistently, and now being able to reflect on a lot of these, like the way I was and how I would have viewed the world. I find a lot of value in being able to like bring those, like how I was feeling, and almost bring those back to earth and explain them to people so it lands now, so they can relate to it now. So one of the things I can really relate to is, and I see it now in some people I know, where if there's a belief of like, there's something wrong with me, I'm broken, or I'm not right, and I need to fix this, and there's something in me that's like unbearable, that if the world was to know about it or see it or hear it, then it would be like, it would end me. And it's just deep embodied shame.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm not right, or I'm not perfect in some way. And so there's an incessant drive in that to heal that. And what that can lead to, and I did it as well. I did the 12-day water fasting, you know what I mean? Like I did the 4 years raw vegan mostly, I did. And a lot of that was finding my way, and a lot of it actually really served me. And a lot of it also, I could have done it differently, needed to swing the pendulum after kind of 5 years of partying, yeah, it's about right, balanced it out. But yeah, like it really is finding that balance, but just to come back to that point, it's recognizing that the surrender in that case is going to be knowing that my pattern is, there's a deeper part of me that believes, oh, I'm broken and I'm not, like, I need to heal this now. And I'm going to pay a stupid amount of money to go do this retreat tomorrow because I need to fix it now, get it out of me, kind of thing. And it's like, no, like sit in it, breathe, trusting that it's not going to be there forever. Trusting that you're on the path and that it doesn't need to be, as you said, more doing. Because a lot of the time the doing is what got us there in the first place. Right. Yeah. And you can be urgent to get to a retreat or whatever it is, have some facilitation experience, but then you're still going to have to integrate it after anyway. So yeah, we can have this sense of urgency. Like, okay, I see there's a shadow there and I need to deal with it right now. And what does integrate mean to you? Because that's another buzzword. Yeah, you're right. I think for me, integration means checking in with what your initial intention was after, if it was, for example, around a retreat or facilitation or working with a coach, and just, checking in with how that feels now. Yeah. So the more intentional we can be, the more we can actually make this happen fast. And it's not about racing, and it's not a race, but I know that we all have
a desire to make things happen fast. But when we are intentional and present with what's happening, then we are able to reflect in real time. And integration as well can be something even more specific. So if we can figure out, okay, what happens to me often is I'm working and I get into, let's say, fight or flight mode, and then I don't take breaks, I don't go to the bathroom, I, end up eating like impulsively instead of checking in with what my body needs.
Yeah.
So now that I know that that's something I'm working on, how am I going to integrate this new knowledge? Oh, I'm going to set a reminder on my phone to take actual breathing breaks and like walk outside for 5 minutes. Or so it can be super specific, but it can also just be intentional. Like, how do I feel about this thing that I was tuned into before? Am I giving myself what I identified that I needed, and trying to be consistent with that, but also trusting the process.
Yeah, it's really, I love that thing of like setting an intention and then checking back in with it at a later time. And something that, like, for instance, with clients, what I would do is in our first session, we'd make a big map of like what are all the things they really want to move through in the different areas of their life. And then at the end of the container or halfway through the container, we'll go back and check in and say, all right, what's that out of 10 now? You were a 5, like what would a 10 be? Oh, you're at an 8 now. Okay, well, what's changed? And they can start to see, because both as a client and as a coach, it can be hard sometimes, because we're looking at the, there's a pile of dirt in front of us and we're just shoveling away. And we're always just looking at what's in our shovel right now. We're not looking at the bigger pile. And often it can be like actually the reflections from outside of us, from maybe friends or family or like people that know us, might say, oh wow, like you really seem different. And we're like, what do you mean? I've got this thing I'm working on, you know what I mean? And actually it can take the reflections, and then at a certain point it lands for us and we go, oh, okay, actually I have changed a lot. Because maybe it's like a situation, like a key moment where maybe a particularly toxic person or a version of the same toxic person arrives in our lives, and we choose a different way. We don't drop back into victim, or we don't drop back into blaming, or we don't, get with the same, narcissistic partner again for the 10th time. It's like, oh, okay, I'm choosing a different way, and it feels easeful. That's how I know things are shifting.
Yeah, it feels easeful. That's a good way to describe it too. And I like what you said about kind of having some structure, because of course structure is really helpful in these things. Setting an intention or a list of what you want to work through, reflecting on it as you go, and then being able to know, even at the end, like, there's always more layers to the onion, but this is what we've gotten through and this is how it's showing up in my life. And when we can recognize how it's showing up in our life, I think that's just so affirming, and we might not recognize it if we don't have an intention in the first place. And so, it all works together beautifully too.
Totally.
To keep motivating us. Yeah.
I think as well, like, so what I've experienced in, let's say, in consistently doing connected breathwork, which is an amazing modality for, shifting these deep pieces, as is like the somatic experiencing, and like they're all different windows into the same house. You know what I mean? We're all getting to the same place. But I've really enjoyed it in the sense that in the beginning with when we've got these like maybe emotions coming up and these parts of ourselves that we haven't really ever welcomed or explored, and we kind of feel we just don't look at that. It's like the monster in the closet. I find the more and more we start to go into these and touch into them, and it's so awesome, or not awesome, it's ugly, and we don't want to go there, and we feel like, like I'm good, but just not that part of me. Like let's not look at that.
Right.
It's the shadow. And then we welcome it and we bring it into a conversation with a coach, or maybe we're working on it emotionally, or releasing it. And I'm like, oh, that was okay, and now I feel way better after.
Yeah.
And then the more and more we do that, it builds that trust. So that, like, I find now in our community, like, I'm like, oh, I felt grief. Let's go into that. You know what I mean? It's like an exciting
it gets
thing
a little
now,
exciting, yeah.
Because I know what's on the other side of that. Like, it's a positive reinforcement instead of like, let's just suppress all those emotions.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you just spoke to kind of like those darker parts that we really don't want to look at. And I think how we can catch that we are shunning a part of ourselves is if we are shoulding ourselves. Like, I shouldn't feel this way, or I should feel this way. So I had a client recently, and he was talking about how he was like feeling a little stressed over his competition in his space. And we basically got to the point where he said, yeah, I do feel jealous, but I shouldn't feel that. That's not me. That's not me. And when we hear this word, that's not me, it's a very, a highlighted sentence of, actually, it is part of you. It's part of all of us. We can all feel the spectrum of emotions for a reason. Yeah. We can all feel jealousy and anger and frustration, and we've just labeled them as undesirable or bad, right?
Or not even us, someone else has. And we've adopted that.
Right. And we've decided that it's true for us. So being able to welcome, the part of you or the part of us that feels jealous, what do they want to say? They don't need to say it. We don't need to act on anything, but just giving them a little bit of airtime even to express can be so powerful.
Sure. Totally. And that's the key. I've actually been exploring this with like in role play with clients recently, where let's say like, so for me, just to share, like I would have come from more of a traditional like a nice guy people pleaser background, been very like submissive, passive, and that resulted in a lot of like, you know, challenges along the way, a lot of building other people's dreams instead of my own, and I'm not worthy, and like I'll just not, you know, attracting some toxic people into my life and accepting behavior that I probably shouldn't have. So how that shifted is, you know, obviously learning about boundaries. What's a boundary? Wow, you know what I mean? And learning about these things, but then actually realizing that and came up actually in some plant medicine journeys actually, where I explored the other side of the coin, which is effectively the asshole. And it's like, yeah, I'm a nice guy and I'm an asshole. I've got both in me.
Yeah.
So I've been exploring role play with particularly like if people are feeling more helpless and they're feeling more like, oh, like I don't have any power, to step into being like a narcissist, be a arrogant, grandiose dickhead. You know what I mean? And see what that feels like. Try that on. And most people, like, even though it feels like, no, I could never do that, because they've associated that with being like shame and a bad person and you'll be exiled. When they actually try it on, there's actually a lot of power there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, we all know what it sounds like and what it looks like to be the polar opposite of who we are, because we're experiencing it in the world. So we have that ability, right, to step in and call in any of those characteristics that we want to. But we feel so much shame around specific behavior that we just don't want to identify it. And then even in role play, even in pretend, it can feel like such an edge, right? I couldn't possibly say that out loud. I couldn't possibly hear myself say that. But if you just let yourself, again, express, like you said, it can bring so much power.
Let's hear your inner asshole.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, asshole.
So preface, this is enactment. This is not the real Johanna coming through. Let's hear what that would sound like if someone wanted to try that.
Yeah, it's funny that you chose the word asshole, actually, because to me that's actually like the worst swear. I feel like we all have different sensitivities for different ones. And that one for me is like, I wouldn't choose it. I wouldn't choose it unless I was so mad. So I think I need a little bit more of a scenario to be mean in.
Well, I've just called you an asshole, so.
I don't know. I wanna say other bad words. I think I might be like.
Yeah, you can just be like arrogant. You can be like.
Yeah.
Just big yourself up. You know?
That's what I was feeling too. Like, probably like, who do you think you are? Get over yourself. Like, you think you're better than me? Calling me that? No. Check yourself, buddy.
That's
what I'd be like. That's
no, I didn't mean that. No.
Well, I heard it come out of your mouth.
But I want you to like me.
Well, too bad. I don't have time for you anymore. That was so uncalled for. I guess.
And now I'm in the victim. So there's another power play where like I can drop into then like, well, it was me, to try and flip you into like the savior.
Yeah.
And if you have a savior complex, then you'll go, even if you're putting on the arrogant thing, you go, oh no, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You know what I mean? And then, or other people will hold that strong arrogance thing,
right?
And then I'll just call someone else my friend, like, oh my god, you can't believe what Johanna just said to me. She, you know, and then they'd be like, oh my god, she's so mean, you know. And that's how the triangle kind of plays out.
Yeah, and both ways. Like for me, if it was holding the arrogance, that's also another defense mechanism, right?
Totally.
Sort of like the icy, you know, closed off.
Yeah, it's like the self-worth, but it's up top, but it's built on scaffold. That's like kind of shaky.
Yeah.
So if anything comes in that threatens me, then that could shake the foundations of my worth or my elevated self-worth. So
right, yes.
Must protect it.
I know.
Save that ego.
Yeah, that archetype comes with so much perfectionism as well, and so much pressure to perform, because heaven forbid I'm walking around saying I'm the best and I drop the ball somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And wow, what a level of stress to live with.
So how is that for you to kind of drop into that and to like role play that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun and it's funny, and it feels like, I mean, choosing the word asshole is very, very intuitive, I think, because that definitely was like, oh no, that's the worst.
Really? Okay,
that's
good.
the worst for me. But otherwise, it just feels fun and fine. Yeah.
Sure. Maybe we'll find more later.
Great. Oh God.
Yeah.
I should have said it was more stressful.
Yeah, it was terrible. Don't do it again. But yeah, so I think that's a really fun practice if we can find. So just to share, like I had my experience of pushing the pendulum to the other side was I was at a retreat beginning of this year. And there was an opportunity where there was a group of people, that basically there was an exercise, and one woman shared after that she really wanted to be like liked and accepted by me, you know, in that exercise and the partner exercise. And then the facilitator was like, who else wants to be liked by Pete? and everyone put their hand up. And I was in this really weird place where my whole life I tried to make people like me and accept me. You know what I mean? Like I really fucking tried to make everyone like me. And that was just like, if I could make, and I revered people who were like, who were the cool kids, you know, and I just wanted so much to be like them. So to be in a place now where I was just like, I didn't really care, and it was just such a strange reflection to see everyone do that, put their hand up. And it was all about her. It was her process, but I was still having a little wow, this is interesting. This is new, you know? Yeah. And it was so funny when I didn't care, that's when it happened. And so the edge for me then was in that container to step in, and there's an exercise where we stand up for 3 minutes and we speak from just whatever's alive, you know?
Yeah,
and it's very just intuitive and very like, you can go into what you want. It could be, I'm standing here and I'm looking at you guys. And actually what I just chose consciously to go into was to go into that grandiose, like arrogant person. Yeah, look at you all. You all want to be like me, don't you? You know? And it was so edgy, you know, because like 30 people look at me like, what if they think I'm being serious?
Yeah.
What if they actually judge me? Because I was brought up to believe that that's the worst thing that I could be. Like in any way arrogant or cocky. Yeah. What happens is then we reject all things that come with that, good and bad. You know, we become almost polarized to the other side, which is like extra nice, extra caring, but then we've no boundaries.
Yeah, right. Because it feels so even scary to think if someone feels that way about me, it's going to mean what? Probably something, it's going to mean death is basically what our brain is saying.
Yeah.
But even still, it's going to mean rejection. They're going to hate me. They're going to tell me I'm bad, all of these things. But I'd also be curious if there was a scenario where still 30 people told you they all want to be liked by you, but you still had the sort of, I want it so bad, would it have even landed?
Exactly.
Like you might have been like, they're lying, you know? So either way, we just can see like what it depends on you. It depends on how you feel and how you receive it.
It's our inner story and our inner lens is constantly being reaffirmed. And we're like, as you said, we can have glaring evidence that it's like a quote from Mark Groves, like create the love, like where it's like we can walk in, there's like hundreds of people in a room that want to love us and we choose the one that's not interested, you know? Yeah. If that's our story, if we believe I'm not lovable, we will find people that confirm that story, that I'm not lovable.
Yeah.
You know, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not wanted, or whatever it is, or I'm too much, or whatever the script is. We will find ways to prove it.
Yeah, I really love working with relationship pattern, like attachment style pattern stuff, because I think when you learn about it, it just becomes glaringly obvious, and it takes a little bit of its power away, you know, like the power of the pattern that we feel like we have, like, I always attract avoidant men. I always attract avoidant men. When you see why that's happening, that's no coincidence at all. No. You realize, okay, I have some power here. And then it happens again. And then you think, okay, well, now I'm choosing this consciously, but I'm still going to choose it because it still feels good. And then eventually just weaning yourself off of it is what I like to think will happen. But I really
okay, so there's I think it's a Wayne Dyer quote. And he says basically like, I walk down a street and there's a big hole and I don't see the hole and I fall into it. And it's dark and it's scary and I'm alone. And eventually I manage to find my way and I pull my way out. Okay. The next day I walk down the same street. This time I see the hole. I walk straight into the hole. It's dark, it's scary, and I pull myself out a bit easier. The third day I walk down the same street. I try to go around the hole. I still fall into the hole and it's dark and scary. But again, I'm getting good at finding my way out of this hole and I get out. The fourth day I walk down the street and I see the hole and I walk around to the side and I walk around the hole and keep going. And the fifth day I choose a new street.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it's epic. And it's just like, that's it. It's like, we don't know what we don't know. And then we find ourselves in the hole and then we start to learn about different like paradigms, like attachment styles, or, you know, the codependency dynamics, or what all these different things that can be happening below the surface, or even the idea of, you know, trapped emotions and how that can be causing this dysregulation on the surface and all these symptoms.
Right.
Once we learn through the new lens, we can start to see like, okay, I'm actually creating this. And we move from I'm a victim of life to, why is it so bad? I always attract these people. It always happens to me. Why does it always rain on me? That kind of thing. To, yeah, okay, I'm creating this, but fuck, why am I creating it? That's so stupid, you know? Yeah. But I'm creating it. And then we have power and we can start to, as you said, make those integrated changes to be more embodied and to move into a new way of living.
Yeah. And just asking questions and getting curious. Why am I choosing to fall in this hole? What can I do about it tomorrow? And the thing with love and relationships especially that I think is hard is that on some level it feels good. Like
There's an
those
addiction.
negative patterns, it really is an addiction. And most of us are probably associating love with love that we experienced from a caregiver when we were young. So even though we are attracting people that are causing us pain, something in it feels good because it feels comfortable. It reminds us of something else, whether it was an early relationship or a caregiver, like I said. So it can be really hard to take yourself out of that. And I think the marker of growth is when it just doesn't interest you anymore. And we really can see the toxicity in it. But I think also there's like the real in between period, like I was mentioning with the surrender, it's like choosing it over and over. And I think there's a period too where we can attract secure people and still be looking over there like, why does that person feel so enticing to me, And so it's like it really does take some time before it's dissolved and we're
we do it until we just get over it, basically.
Yeah, hopefully we get over it. Yeah, that's the thing.
There was another thing that actually came up this morning. I was chatting with some friends this morning, and it arrived the concept of, like you said, it's like an addiction to like something. It's almost like, okay, imagine we had like an alcohol or a sugar addiction. Okay,
yep.
We could really enjoy that experience of drinking a beer or eating a cake every day, and we would probably know on a deeper level that that's probably not good for me, long term, even though it feels so good in the moment. Okay, whereas when we're addicted to something like saving people, to sacrificing ourselves and to heal someone else, that it can be conflicting, because we can feel like, oh, but like I'm doing a good thing, I'm a good person, I'm identifying by being a good person by helping and saving this person, whether it's in a romantic relationship or it's a client that we're taking on that actually it's not serving anyone, but we're choosing to continue to do that again and again, same actor or different actors, recognizing that that is actually an addiction, like an alcohol or a sugar addiction. Even though we could believe it's a virtuous addiction in some ways,
of course. I mean, even when we're making the decision to have the cake or drink the beer, some part of our mind is convincing us it's okay right now, right?
Sure.
So
I deserve it, or I need it, or
Yeah, exactly. So in the level where we can create the picture even easier, oh, this is serving someone, this is helping someone, I'm giving them an empathetic ear or whatever, it would be even easier to say yes. But then we have to ask, well, what does it feel like for me? Does it feel good to do this actually? And when we ask that question, I'm sure there is a level of, that does feel good because I have that much energy to serve. And then a level where it doesn't feel good because the reciprocation isn't there, or I just actually want to be heard instead of just, giving and giving and giving. But we can't just assume anyone is going to treat us any different than we train them to treat us.
Sure.
Right? So again, it's like that self-reflection. What do I actually want here? And going and asking for it. And I know that that's been an edge for me in different ways than it is for most people.
And we don't know what we don't know. Because if I've grown up, like you said, in an environment where I believe the only way I can prove my worth is to, basically self-sacrifice, have no boundaries and save people, then that's going to be hard because I don't know any different. That's love, you know? So actually it's seeing a different paradigm and seeing like, oh, okay, well, first of all, this isn't actually serving anyone, because by self-sacrificing, crossing boundaries, people-pleasing, whatever it is, I'm actually perpetuating the pattern in this person. Whereas if I was to hold a firm boundary, they'd either adapt and change, or they would just move on.
Right.
But it's not my job to fix them.
Yeah, but you do have to be able to hold the potential of rejection or whatever other backlash you might get. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Like, how would we, let's say there's a deeper piece of rejection and you were working with someone. Like, let's say I'm holding on to a lot of rejection. You know what I mean? Rejection wounds. Okay.
Yeah.
How would you guide someone into that in the session?
Yeah, I think so. What I like to do in my sessions is the mindset piece and the somatic piece. And in my somatic training, there was a lot of focus, obviously, on the somatic part. Yeah. But what I've noticed with men is they also want to talk and do the head work. So
what do you mean?
I've spent a lot of time studying mindset work as well. So I definitely start with a talk piece and like a little bit of talk therapy, let's call it, to really find what we are looking at, and maybe pick some things out of that based on the language that you're using.
Yeah.
But then still going into the body and feeling, what's alive. And there's going to be something, which is the beauty of that work.
Yeah.
And it might take a while, and it might even take a couple sessions, because if we are so disconnected from our body that everything is identified as numb, which is also a feeling, by the way. It still might take some time to find it. But then in a session, let's say you've identified something that feels heavy in your sacral area. We might the goal is to kind of meet the edge of that, not to just be like, oh, that's sadness and you need to cry, because that's also not going to work. So it's me getting really curious with you. What does that feel like in your body? I might ask you a question like, what is the emotion behind that? And you might have an answer right away. You might not. You might have a surface level emotion, which might have one deeper that we can find. And then there might be an opportunity to express that emotion, or we could meet the part of you that is there, right? So I know that you're familiar with parts work and stuff, and I think that it's so beautiful too, because it's a way to not fully identify with what we're feeling and decide like, this is me now, and let it be all consuming, but just talk to this part and ask questions like, oh, what does he want? What does he need? Like what's happening here? Just if he could have the mic, what would he say? And I find that work is really powerful. Yeah.
Totally. I love it. So parts therapy there's a few different kind of ways of looking at it. Some people call it inner child work. There's a modality called internal family systems therapy. And basically what it is it's looking at, like, as you said, if we've got something inside of us, it's almost detaching that from ourselves. So it's not like I am bad, but it's like a part of me feels bad. Okay.
Exactly.
And then we start a dialogue between us and the part. And we can say, like, what age are you? You know, where do you come from? What do you want? What do you need? And then with that, we get to like, it's almost like we put that like bad part or the unwelcome part on the wall. And then me and you can sit here and we can look at that on the wall. And it's not like, it removes my defenses and my ego a lot around it. Now that part can have its own defense mechanisms, and it can be anger, but then underneath there's sadness or the shame or whatever. But it allows us to, like you said, to actually to really drop into it. And the way, as you said, the subconscious works, I've found is so fascinating, where when we connect to like in the like the way the subconscious work is with imagery and with like the emotions, and it's almost like hard for the mind to truly understand. But when we can connect to these parts of ourselves and give them what they need, just like, what do you need? Oh, you need a hug. Okay, here's a virtual hug. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm crying. And now I just feel lighter, and this problem seems gone, you know? And then I see the shifts in my life afterwards.
Right.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. That's a perfect word. And like you mentioned, inner child work as well. So it really is parts of us that didn't mature. Yeah. So it can feel like a 4-year-old, an 11-year-old part of us. And sometimes in the work that I do, you actually see the person kind of like turn into this childlike version, and they start even speaking in sentences that are a little more childlike, or behaviors like giggling even. And it's just so interesting. And I've done the same for sure. And you just have this like awareness all of a sudden of, how do I feel? I feel 6. And there's truly an energetic part of us stuck at 6 years old that's
frozen in time.
Yeah. And so can serve that part.
Like I maybe you're familiar with this, but like the nature of what's called the brain stem, which is where a lot of these experiences are held, these incomplete reflexes or incomplete parts of us, doesn't have actually a concept of time. It's like the lizard brain. Right. So it's like the gecko on the wall. Like it doesn't have actually, like, it just, you know, shits and eats and sleeps, and that's all it does. So when we have incomplete parts of us, it's living in what's called the brain stem, which is the low brain. It's the least evolved and mature part of our brain. And when we drop back into, like, if we get triggered by something and we drop back into this, it's like our body it loads up an old program, and it's like we are, as you said, 6 again. Right. And then what happens is when we do this somatic work, be it breath work or, you know, the exploring through the mind part as well, anything that allows us to reconnect to it, it allows us to almost, I like to say, it like brings it up into the limbic brain, which is the animal part of the brain, and kind of puts a stamp on it. So it's almost like, this happened when you were 6, and now you're in 2020, you know, and you're, you know, 32 or whatever it is. And it allows the body to register it as, oh, this happened and it was a significant thing, but it's not happening right now to me. Yeah. Okay. So instead of when my partner goes to leave and walk out the door and I become 6 again and I throw a tantrum like a child, actually now I can still remember that happened, and my mum did abandon me potentially, you know, but I don't respond like a 6-year-old. I can meet the stimulus with the appropriate response, which is what we talked about at the start. That's regulation. It's been able to have what's happening around us and not to be thrown into an earlier childlike version of ourselves. And that's where the money is, baby. That's like that's the goal. That's regulation.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like you said, thrown into the 6-year-old version, because whether we know that it's consciously happening or not, it's happening. So it's not like if I have some program running, it's where is it running and where is it affecting my life. And so, yeah, it just requires getting so curious and being able to, like you said, see, okay, I still feel this pain. You know, when my partner leaves after a fight, it feels painful, but it's not the same. And being able to, discern there.
I'm not throwing a tantrum on the floor.
Right. Yeah, I hope not.
And the thing is that the flip side of that is if we've attracted a partner from that wounded place, probably they've got the reverse. So they are generally someone who likes to, you know, be more distant and avoidant. Okay. So they're more likely to run away, which will trigger our abandonment, which will then trigger their avoidance again. And they will also be acting from a 6-year-old place as well, or 7 maybe, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we get to pretty much start like play this cycle out until one of us says, I'm done.
Yeah. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy with any of this stuff, with relationships or anything, whatever we believe, our brain's just going to find the evidence over and over and over, whether it's not being able to get clients, make money, have relationships, have good friendships, have like male friendships or female friendships, whatever the story is, our brain is genius enough to find the evidence everywhere so that we can keep running that story because we're familiar with the story and it feels safe.
Exactly. Even if it's not serving us on a bigger level.
Yeah.
Like you said, 30 people that tell us that we're great and we still have a story of we're not great. And, okay, well, they were just lying. Or they don't know the real me. They don't know this weird part of me, this 6-year-old part of me.
Yeah, if they saw this, they would change their mind.
Yeah, they'd all think I'm disgusting. So I'll just continue to put on a face and hide all of that, you know? And then we realize that actually everyone's got these funky bits and pieces. And once we welcome them to the light, like actually own them. We don't even have to like put it on Instagram or anything, although some people probably, I've seen people who do that, like where they will uncover a part and then kind of integrate it and then becomes a story. And it's actually like that act in a way can actually be a cover for another part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, I find when we integrate these things, it's much of a nothingness. Like you said, it fades away into the distance and we forget it was ever there.
Yeah,
we just show up slightly differently.
Yeah. There's a lot of different directions to go there. What was I thinking? Just about, it can be like a sneaky cover, a sneaky cover of being like, oh, I got the thing. I solved it. I'm fixed. I'm good. That's pretty much like a good sign that it's not quite good, probably.
Yeah, you've reached level 1 and there's 10 more levels, but we'll just say on level 1 and then sell people a program on level 1.
Sure, yeah. And I don't want to perpetuate the idea that there's like always more to fix and work to do. And on some level there is, but I think we can also get addicted to fixing ourselves.
Well, that's the I'm broken or there's something wrong with me. And at a certain point, that again, like falling in the hole, we realize actually, is that still serving me?
Yeah.
You know, what if there's an easier way?
Yeah, an easier way. Yeah, easy is a really nice word, and easeful. And I think that life can be easeful if we choose it to be that way, but it requires going in and doing the work, and it requires allowing the benefits that we reap to be easeful and beautiful.
And to integrate them, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. One more piece I suppose we can dive into, and your journey of like going from the initial, like I'm assuming leaving the 9-to-5 and the matrix and then starting your own business and doing your thing, okay? And now then this transition into like in this last period into like your second business that you would call it, your more soul mission business.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I would love to. So actually I was never really in the matrix, which is funny. I never had a 9-to-5 job. I had some random jobs like camp counselor, server, but from when I was quite young, I just decided I'm actually going to be self-employed, and probably because of the influence of my parents. My parents have a farm and so they are self-employed, and it was very interesting to have them at the house and in the house at very different times, but it was never like mom and dad need to get out the door to go to work. So I had a beautiful example that entrepreneurship is available to me. And I went through university still. I got a nutritional science degree and I was on track to become a registered dietitian, which is like 1 or 2 years after, depending on the school. And I already knew I want to work online as a dietitian. So I started looking into all the legalities of that, and I need to register in these different provinces and whatever. It was going to be a nightmare, but this is what was going to happen. But during my university degree, I started a little side hustle as a social media manager, and I was working with wellness businesses. So it was still in line, and I enjoyed that so much that by the time I graduated, I no longer wanted to pursue this dietitian role, but I had been accepted. It was a very competitive program. Only 30 people got in. So I told myself I will go into the one last year. 6 weeks in, I was crying every day and I quit. It was not for me. I knew, but I got whatever. I told myself a whole story.
Got to fall in the hole.
Right, I had to fall in the hole. And when I dropped out too, they were like, this is really serious. I don't know if anyone has ever done it other than for an emergency reason. And so I had, many academic people telling me that I was ruining my life and that there was only this many more months. Anyway, so I pursued social media and online marketing, and I did that for a couple of years. And I built this business where I was coaching people, I was running groups, teaching people basically how to build a sustainable and scalable business behind their freelancer coaching service. So the business school basically for freelancers and coaches, which was so fun, and I really loved it. And I developed some online courses as well, one in this very room. And that business gave me freedom. It gave me a lot of financial freedom as well. The things that I wanted, I wanted to be able to be anywhere in the world. I wanted to be able to work from cute cafes from my laptop and teach people stuff. And it was perfect. And in that world, in the online marketing world, we hear about these words like funnels and scalability, and I was all about it, and I learned it all, and I learned how to do it for my own business, and I finally had built the perfect machine, the perfect, like literally $1 million scalable funnel. I'd hired an ads agency, and we were growing this, and it just occurred to me, I don't care about this anymore, and I actually don't want this to be my reputation either. The main thing was teaching people how to be social media managers. That was like the really scalable one, which I think is a service that people need and want, and I knew a lot about it. But all of a sudden I just was like, oh, this isn't aligned. Yeah. So now what do? I've built this whole business that has given me what I wanted. It's making money. Why would I just walk away from it? Well, why would I walk away from it? Because I didn't build a business so I could do something I didn't want to do. Yes. That's, I wouldn't be an entrepreneur then. I would just go work for someone else who can give me stability and so I don't have to be stressed or whatever that is. So I moved away from that. And the main thing within that was I saw so many of these people that I was working with, and I could give them a beautiful framework, but if they didn't believe that they could create, do, be, or have that thing, they weren't going to do it and they weren't going to show up. And there was a lot of fear around showing up online, fear around getting clients, but they still wanted it so badly. So I knew we needed to really focus on the mindset stuff first, and then they can go through the business modules and it'll be great. It'll go off. It'll be fine. But we got to do this work first. But still in that, I had to realize that I had lost all of my interest really for the marketing space and social media space, although I use it as a tool for my business, definitely. And just pendulum swaying, is that a word?
Yeah, swaying.
I swaying the pendulum back over to this other side of personal development.
I think it's swung.
Right. I've said too many words in this last hour. The pendulum, it swung back over to the other side through a lot of thick fear and needing to surrender and stories. And is this gonna, is this right? Am I dumb? What if I don't even know what I want to do? Because it wasn't clear to me at that point what I was going to do or who I was going to serve. And this was all happening in tandem with the skin situation. So it really was my dark night of the soul months. And I was back at my parents' house for a visit, not because I had to go there, but napping every day, crying on the floor. Like I really didn't know what was going to come out the other side of this. And then finally found my way into the personal development space in a really, serious and committed way. And so that is what I've been studying for the last, I guess, 15 months it's been in the somatic therapy. And this business feels more like it is through me, whereas the other business was for me. And it wasn't that I was ripping people off by any means, but it was definitely fully for my own selfish, this is the life that I want to create. And this seems like a pathway and this seems fun and creative. And this business, and specifically serving men in the personal development space and somatic therapy just feels not like it's not my option, but that there's some clear direction that's like this audience are these people, that I can just serve them in a really beautiful way. And there has been so much come up for me around that. First of all, around my original target audience was just an old version of me. And it was easy for me to market to that girl because I knew her so well. Sure. This target audience now, I have to just be so curious and I just have to be completely open to the experience that men are having and learn what that feels like for them because I don't know. And so, like I said, lots of stuff has come up around that. But at the same time, it feels very guided and on purpose. And I feel so honored. And when I even tap into the energy of what I want my container to feel like, I just like remember it. And then any fear that I have around moving forward just dissipates because it's like, oh yeah, this is the mission here. And this is what it feels like. Yeah. Long story long.
It's great. Thank you. Similar, I suppose, experience for me with working predominantly with women before. So we'll trade notes, Tell you all about guys, tell me about girls.
yes. Give me the secrets.
Yeah, as I was saying before, it's so fascinating, this idea of like, as you said, building that first business. And I feel there is that initial thing of like, we learn the skills and we create the lifestyle. And for a lot of people, that is it. It's like, what am I doing this for? What's the why? Well, it's financial freedom and travel and laptop lifestyle and cool experiences and cool people. And then at a certain point, we're like, okay, it's not really doing it still, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it was, professional musician for 8 years, traveling the world and playing in these amazing places.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, totally. And it is,
Yeah.
and then we upgrade.
Yeah, right. And it's probably just due to maturation and our own shifts, but also kind of knowing the difference between really feeling what heart-centered work feels like. And I think that someone can have the exact business that I had and feel so fulfilled exactly like I did, and it can be their whole career, feeling passionate and excited about that. But also, I just want to remind people that we have permission to pivot, and it doesn't have to be, any business we build doesn't have to be a sentence. And I think sometimes we take it so like that, especially when we're attached to it and we're like, my business is me and I am the business. And first of all, we need a little bit of space from that. And when we have that space, it allows us to trust that what is coming up next is safe and it is okay. And I think there's also a bit of societal shame around pivoting or switching jobs or switching careers, and that person isn't stable and they don't know what they want and whatever story comes up with that. So again, we feel this pressure to stay with what we know and what feels comfortable, even though we've created it. And at one point we didn't know anything about that business and it wasn't comfortable, and having to re-meet the edge of uncomfortability again and jump in.
Totally. And I think that, like, as a final piece is really powerful, because we talked about this in terms of that pivot, and the fear of being shamed or fear of being judged for that. I do experience this a lot with, clients and just people around me, people I meet, where they have a desire to do something and they've kind of everyone's doing the best they can with what they have.
Right.
So we're kind of saying, well, based on the information I have and what I feel, I would like to be a farmer. You know what I mean? And then actually I get out in the farm and I'm like, well, I really enjoy the animals, but not so much the labor. So maybe I want to be a vet. But what will people think of me? Because I said on Instagram, I'm a farmer now. You know what I mean? I got my fucking dungarees on, So like just dancing to Cotton Eye Joe, So like how can we do that? And it's recognizing that there's each development is like the next level. And we're consistently refining and peeling away the layers of the onion, like you said, back to our truth and to our true selves. So noticing that those pivots are actually like wins.
Yeah.
It's actually a great thing. And the only reason that we can, have fear around that or shame around that is if we have a deep internalized fear of it within ourselves. So like if someone says to me, hey Pete, you got a weird nose, and I've been shamed for my nose my whole life, then I'm gonna be like, oh fuck my nose, But if they say you got a weird nose, I'm like, fuck, what's up with you? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, yeah, actually I got a weird thing about noses. I've had plastic surgery 20 times actually,
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, this is yours.
Right. Exactly.
So if I have a deep ingrained fear of like, what will people think of me? Then if one person mentions something, I'll take that like the world is crashing down again. I'll confirm my fear.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm saying, oh, this is great, this is showing I'm growing and learning more. And, one of the things we talked about before, like, I'm opening more to the idea of maybe inviting a few more, like, let's say heart-centered men onto this podcast as well, and just a slightly different flavor and a different angle. And if I was tethered to the idea of like, I can only have women, because then actually that wouldn't be allowed the full expression of me and of this offering to really come through. So it's having that openness to not be tied to any outcome or fear of what others might think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I've just been thinking a lot that I think the sentence, like, I used to think, is so beautiful, because it just means we are open-minded to a new perspective and a new idea and a new way. And I think sometimes people feel fear about, having to say that they've changed their mind when something could happen in an instant and our whole paradigm of life could be shattered, like it could be anything. So sometimes when it's subtle and it feels more, oh, I just changed my mind, it feels a bit more scary. But if I have some big story, oh, this happened to me and now I can change, we think we need this big story or this
the Hollywood fucking
right. Yeah. And you don't need it. Just follow
fucking
what you want to do. Live your life.
Yeah, totally. That I really And again, we can always find the angle if we really want. Like if we really want to sell it in a certain way, like I can come up with a big spiel around, well, actually, I realized that, and well, for my listeners, it was more important to include an integrated view. And it's just like, no, I just want to chat to everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like honestly, and it doesn't, no one even really cares because they're too concerned about what other people are thinking about them.
Right. Another thing that was in my mind too. People don't care as much as we think. And the Instagram thing, I think people get really caught up like, oh, as soon as I change my Instagram bio, everyone's going to know and they're going to talk about it. And it's just not going to happen that way. Like it would actually be nice if it happened that way, I think.
Yeah.
Just like red alert. These are the clients I want. Tell everyone.
Like the paparazzi are following you everywhere, It's like, here's the thing. People don't care about you, but people don't care about you.
Right.
So it's like, oh no, but fuck yeah, know?
Yeah.
There's freedom, ultimately. If we can get past the fear of I don't matter or, I'm not enough or whatever it is, it's like, no, you're enough, but you give yourself that. You have that, if we can have that internalized feeling of like, I'm enough as I am. And then, the freedom of then actually not having anyone really, I would have said, no one actually cares, but like in a great way.
Yeah. Let's all keep striving for that. I'm enough. I'm worthy.
Amen.
If we can go to bed saying that, then we're pretty good.
I think that's a beautiful way to close out.
Perfect.
What's been your favorite moment of today?
My favorite moment of today was having to try and step into my asshole a little bit.
Yeah, that was fun.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. I'll be running my asshole workshop online. Become the asshole you were born to be.
Yeah, the integrated asshole.
Okay, let's build a funnel around that, right?
Yeah, full moon ceremony.
Yeah.
Thank you again for having me.
Thank you for joining, and looking forward to many fun conversations again in the future.
Great, can't wait.
Aho!